Good afternoon, everybody. First off, we'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight to our 2025 Hurricane Conference. We have a full night of speakers and guests and vendors as well.
I guess so. Oh, you want us up here now?
Huh?
You want us up here? No. Okay.
Is the mic working? There we go. Had to get it closer to me. All right, there we go. All right, so I'll start over. Good afternoon, everybody. We want to welcome everybody and those that are viewing at home. Thank you for attending our 2025 Hurricane Conference. We have a full night of speakers and guests that are going to give us a lot of good information. At the conclusion of the conference, we have a vendor fair next door that's loaded up with folks. And I hope that at the conclusion tonight, we'll all be better prepared for a storm. We'll give us a little brief overview of what we're going to do tonight. We'll have the opening remarks by mayor, town manager, and police chief here. Around 10 after 6, we'll have Billy Howard from Brunswick County Emergency Management. He's going to give us an in-depth overview of hurricane safety and preparedness. Around 6:30, we're going to have a panel discussion where we're going to have a group of folks up here. A couple weeks ago, we put out online that we wanted everyone to submit questions that they wanted answered for storms and hurricanes. So we compiled a list of those. We're going to get them answered. After that, someone I'm very excited for, Mr. Steve Pfaff from National Weather Service is here to talk to us about hurricanes. And at the conclusion of that, we can all go over and see all the vendors we got and speak to all those folks. All right. So to kick things off, we have Police Chief Charlie Morris, Mayor Liz White, and Town Manager Catherine Adams.
Good evening, everyone. Tropical storms, be they water or wind events or a combination, as is hurricanes as they present themselves, bring a great deal of uncertainty and anxiety. One of the ways to dampen those anxieties and stress is to know your risk, anticipate, have your emergency plan at the ready, and know your evacuation zone. Also be alert and recognize warnings. So you'll learn this evening from our town staff and other invited agencies how to prepare and how and when to put those plans into action. So I'm very excited about all of the work that they have put in for the benefit of the town. I want to thank our staff, our agency and organization participants, and for you, the residents, for taking advantage of this terrific opportunity, and I thank you for your willingness to give up your evening to learn how to be ready in advance. Catherine, I think.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to say hello. Catherine Adams, the town manager here, and echo what the mayor said. We're so glad you came out for this important topic tonight, and I hope you will see you have a wonderful, highly skilled staff that has been preparing and been working on hurricane preparedness for years. We've been refining it over the last year since I've been here as well, and we've assembled a very strong staff for you tonight, hopefully to answer all of your questions and concerns, in addition to the agencies at the fair that you'll get to speak with. But certainly if you have remaining questions after tonight, feel free to email us, let us know. We want to make sure everyone gets the information that they need as we start hurricane season. Thank you again for being here. Now I'm going to turn it over to Charlie.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Once again, thank you for everyone in attendance that's here in person, and also the folks that are watching on television. We appreciate you tuning in to this very important conference that we are putting on here. So I just want to go over a few goals that we have for this conference. And first and foremost is your personal preparedness, that you are ready for the storm. You have the information that you need to make good, sound decisions, and that know that we are here working for you during this, well, all the time, but especially during the storms when we have the inclement weather that moves in on us. So also the town preparedness and our response. You know, what we do as a town in response to a storm. So as what does the police department do, or the fire department, or public utilities? So we're going to share some insight into that about how we prepare for a storm, which includes our utilities, our sewer and our water. I know that there's some questions, there's always questions around that. So hopefully by the end of the night, we will have those questions answered for you, so you will be informed. One thing that's on a lot of people's minds, I know when we have a impending storm coming, is, are we going to close the bridges? And what does the reentry look like? So we're going to shed some light on how we make decisions if a bridge gets closed, and what's the criteria to close the bridges? What's the criteria for a reentry program? So we're going to discuss some of that, and hopefully you'll walk away here, with a lot more knowledge and detail with these topics. And one of the things over the past year, and we had a couple storms to refine our skills last year, was our communication efforts. So we pushed out so much information. We started communicating 72 hours. We tried to start 72 hours before a storm, moves in on us. And we've really refined our communication skills, because we want you to know what we know. And when you have that information, you can make informed decisions for your personal safety, for your family, and for your neighbors. And then lastly, when we get done with the panel interview and the National Weather Service, I hope everyone takes advantage of the resource fair that is going on just over in our police training room, which that is an awesome opportunity to actually speak to the folks that are vendors during the storm. And if you have specific questions, the police department, the fire department, the North Carolina Deaf and Hard of Hearing is here. So we just have a variety. The Department of Insurance is here. We have a variety of vendors who who want to answer your questions. So please take that opportunity to take full advantage of that. So that's our goals for the conference. Thanks everybody for being here, and I'll turn it back over to Major Cook.
All right, our first speaker up tonight will be Mr. Billy Bradshaw from Brunswick County Emergency Management, and he'll be discussing hurricane preparedness and safety.
Good evening. I'm Billy Howard. I'm with Brunswick County Emergency Services, and I'm actually with EMS now, and I was with Emergency Management, and I was the Access and Functional Needs Coordinator for a while, and then I moved into my new role now. Can everyone hear me? So what I want to talk about is what we're going to do before, during, and after an event. We'll have the preparation time if it's a hurricane, or maybe, we might not have that if it's an acute event like a tornado, and we can discuss all that as well. So before an emergency, around this time of year before hurricane season starts, it's time to, update or create an emergency plan. Make sure you get emergency alert notifications, whether that's for your town emergency alerting software or system, or the Brunswick County's Ready Brunswick. It's the Everbridge platform that will send out mass notifications. And if you want to sign up for our Access and Functional Needs Registry, that's on our Everbridge platform as well. And it's just some additional questions. So if you have some sort of access and functional need, we'll be aware of that as well. Make emergency supply kits. I know we used to say you need about 3 days for emergency home supplies. Now it's a little bit longer, so it could go up to a week. And then secure your property, and we'll discuss all of these. Emergency plans, that could be from finding safe spots in your house for each type of disaster, like I was saying, hurricanes, tornadoes. Post emergency numbers in your telephones. If our cell phones run out of battery and we don't have access to our phone directory in our phones, we need to have some hard copies somewhere we can keep those available. Keep family records and waterproof and fire containers, some safes, medical information, driver's license, birth certificates, passports, and then your medical information as well. Emergency meeting places, so if you get displaced or lost from your home, make sure your family knows where a location point where they can find you if they don't have a ability to call you on your telephone. And always have multiple ways to get credible information, and it's trusted sources. Every time we have a hurricane, everybody wants to become a meteorologist and post everything on Facebook. So, the internet can be a good source as long as you're going to, your local news, National Weather Service, National Hurricane Center, that provides, good trusted information. But I would be cautious to, listen to somebody on Facebook that's not a meteorologist. And there's different sources, weather radios, your cell phone, TV, computer, like I was saying. Ready Brunswick, this is our emergency alerting system. It is through Everbridge. You can sign up for that. I know we have some residents that have different addresses. You can put multiple addresses in here. So if you live in a different part of the state or the country and you have a summer home here, you can actually have both addresses in there, and it will update you on any kind of weather or significant events in the area. Access and functional needs. About half of our population qualifies for some sort of access and functional needs, whether it be communication issue, and it's not limited to deaf and hard of hearing. It could be English as a second language, and that type of communication, so we can make sure we can communicate with everyone. It could be a mobility issue or even transportation to a shelter. And what we do with the access and functional needs is our vulnerable population that sign up for this, if they need a ride to a shelter, if we ever do stand one up in an event, we will provide that transportation. We may come by and get you in a school bus or a Parks and Recs van or whatever we need to do to get you to that shelter. Also, we provide resources there like walkers and wheelchairs, transfer benches that will assist you to maintain your independence while you're at the shelter. So again, what to expect if you're on the registry. We can help you create an emergency plan. We'll do check-in calls every spring, usually before hurricane season, and just see if your needs have changed. And we can also help connect with some resources. Basic emergency supply list. If you see me at a booth a little later on, I have these printed out so you don't have to take notes or remember all these. These are busy slides, but this just illustrates all the things that you might need during an emergency, from water to flashlights to dog food and cat food, or how to take care of your animals. And the next slide's a little bit busier, but again, I have all this printed out, so if you want a copy of this, you can get it. Secure your home and property before a hurricane, everything in your yard. I know everybody has trampolines, and so when a hurricane comes, all your neighbors are gonna have the trampolines, right? Because they get relocated. So things like that, anything, grills, flower pots, they all can be projectiles, and they'll all, be relocated to somebody else's property, go through windows. So just make sure you secure everything that's loose around your home. And so any dead trees or vegetation that you think may be a hazard that would fall on your home, try to take care of that prior to any events. During emergencies, if you choose to not evacuate and you want to shelter in place, be mindful of the flooding in your home. Listen out for your high winds and tornado warnings. Monitor the news. Again, not only do we want to monitor before an event happens, but during the event as well to stay updated on the information as it changes. Avoid the use of candles, and we'll talk about some generator safety coming up. Shelter in place. The person on the left might have been me about 20 years ago. That's not me now. So we don't want to be like that person. So the family on the right, you can see they're probably playing a board game. So if you're sheltering in place and you lose power, you want to make sure that you have things to do, especially if you have kids, occupy their time. They're going to get bored. So just from everything that you need for necessities to maybe some, family time, board games to just so you don't get out and just start wandering around during, high winds or any kind of flooding situations. So what to do with tornadoes? Always get in the low spot of your home. The lowest spot, usually in interior closets or bathrooms. Um, uh, you cover yourself, and if a tornado's coming, make sure you cover yourself. It says with a mattress, I got a king size mattress at my house. I'm not dragging it into a bathroom to cover myself with. So like a thick quilt, sleeping bag, something like that that can cover yourself. And something that we really never consider, but it's all on the literature, is wear a helmet. Everybody's got a football helmet at home, but so maybe a bicycle helmet, or someone mentioned to me that she rides horses, so she had a horse helmet. So anything that can protect your head from any falling or flying debris. Again, monitor the news, have a radio handy, a weather radio, battery operated. I know they have some that can, you can crank to charge up the batteries. Cell phones, some cell phones actually have FM chips where you can listen to your local radio stations. I've not seen one of those in a while, but they do exist. Just make sure you have something that if the power goes out and the internet's out and no cell phone service, you can still get some kind of updated information. And avoid using candles. So in an event, candles or any kind of open flame source for lighting is a fire hazard. So if during an event we have flooding, we have high winds, the first responders may not be able to get to you. So if you call and see your house is on fire, there may be trees down, the road may be washed out, so it could be hours or days before we'd ever get to you, and you could have significant loss. So just be cautious of that, using alternative lighting source if the power does go out at your residence. Portable generator safety tips. If you don't have one already wired into your home with a transfer switch, always make sure that you follow the manufacturer recommended instructions. Always use it outdoors. Inside of a garage is not good as well. You can still get some of the gas inside your house. And always use the appropriate size power cord. Any undersized power cord can pose a fire risk as well. After emergencies, continue to monitor the news. So we know during hurricanes, we'll see a lot of rain coming here, and then it goes inland, and then a week later, we get a lot of the flooding back. So continue to monitor the news after the event, roads that are closed, shelters that are open, or resources that may be available. They will be, they'll be on our websites and advertise on TV or wherever we can put that information out to the public. Assess your property and contact your insurance. One of the things to probably do before hurricane season or beginning of the year is always take pictures of your property. So if you do have any damage, you can show on May 30th we had no damage to our home, and June 5th there was a tree in it. So you have before and after pictures to show the damage did occur in that time frame. Always make sure you don't drive through flooded roads. I know Steve Paff last year had a picture of a road that was flooded, and it looked like it was a solid road, and when the water receded, it was a huge hole. So there are risks, even though you think it's a solid road and it's not. And always report your issues to your electrical companies. If you have power outages, make sure that you contact them. Even though your neighbors don't have power and you think somebody's called, just make sure they're aware of your address. And again, continue to monitor the news, contact 511. Your local live traffic updates are on drivenc.gov. But even like during PCT8, the road closures were coming in so quick that we were having a hard time keeping up with all the road closures. The deputies do a really good job of getting out and putting those out for us. And we're trying to update that as much as possible. I think we had about 200 road closures out during PCT8, and it was just very difficult. So some information maybe not have been caught up with what's going on out and on our streets, so just be mindful. And then continue monitoring, readync.org or the Brunswick County website, emergency management website. Check on others. You may have some neighbors that don't have the ability to get out and get the resources they need. So check on your neighbors, make sure everyone has what they need, and they can contact us, and we can connect them with resources. We have a really good VOED program. Leslie Stanley, she's the county's VOED coordinator, and she works with a ton of volunteer resources during events or after events to connect our public to get what they need. Again, assess your property, contact your insurance company, take pictures of damage. If you have to make repairs, some temporary repairs like putting tarps on your roof, if you have damage, make sure you keep receipts of everything you bought, and then don't throw anything away until the insurance company tells you to do so. You also want to maintain some cash on hand, so you may not be able to get money out of an ATM, or businesses may not be able to take your card, so you want to be able to have some cash to you make purchases, or if you need to travel, get gas, get food, any kind of resources you need. Turn around, don't drown. We were talking about this, and well, it was going to be. So make sure like I said before, turn around, don't drown, don't drive through any standing water. There was a picture up there of a couple of cars in flooded water, and one of them looked like they drove through a barricade just to get to where the water was so deep that the car couldn't make it through. So, law enforcement puts those barricades up, or the DOT puts those barricades up for a reason, to keep the public safe, and we don't want anybody to get hurt. And that's it. Anybody have any questions for me? I know that was pretty quick, and I'll be here all night. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I do have a question. So I've absolutely, first of all, enjoyed this presentation, but I was wondering, language access and communication needs. There's so many deaf people, deafblind, hard of hearing in this area, and so that is a concern of mine. How would we be able to share that information with those communities? A lot of people in this room are able to hear, and so they have those radio resources, but are there resources available for those communities that you're aware of?
Yes, and I work with Herbie, and if we don't have anything, then I'll make sure that I work with Herbie to get whatever we need. Our Everbridge platform will do text to speech. It will do polling platforms as well, so it's interactive. So we can send out messages, and you can actually respond through the app on your phone of your needs or your request. So it's all it's text to speech, or it's actually written out for the emergency alert notifications. So you'll get that information that way.
Okay, don't hear me out. Don't get me wrong. I've been around for a very long time, and I guess I'm just looking at thinking, what about all the information and the nuanced information that is missed in that? And I recognize that y'all worked very hard to improve communication access, to be inclusive, to write everything out as much as you can. But I do still have concerns, because I'm wondering, are we really ready to reach the deaf, deafblind, hard of hearing community in a state of emergency? I hear you that there's a text to speech, that there is a notification sent out, but what about a live interpreter? What about a video relay interpreter?
Right.
What about a tactile interpreter for people who are deafblind? Or do we have those in place and ready? And that's what my question would be.
We don't, and we can work on that. That is something. I know our emergency medical services has an iPad that they can use for.
Yep, I know of that resource. Yep, so having it ready, like you said.
Right. So we can incorporate something like that. Just how it lives in our emergency notification software, I'm not sure, but we can definitely work on making sure that we get that right information out.
Thank you, thank you. I do have a second question. I apologize. I am very inquisitive. That's just who I am. But for this audience, is it just the Brunswick County residents that you're really reaching out to, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So in that resources for interpreters, especially making sure it's available because we pay taxes just as our peers.
Right.
And so I'm wondering how are we going to access them specifically to get, because of course the information is valuable, information is important, but my concern is for those who aren't within the realm, because I work for the state, so I'm here. And so I have access to this information, but so many others in the community, they may not have that access.
I agree.
And so that's what I'm hoping for, to be able to advocate for that, and so we can just step up a little bit, including ourselves.
I agree. We'll work on that.
Okay, so that means that you're gonna be working with Herbie, myself, and then we'll create an action plan to have deaf, hard of hearing communities in this area and making sure that they get what is missed, and we'll be providing that again, right?
Yes.
Yes, I hear you are. My interviewer mentioned that we're laughing, but we all are in this together, so I want to make sure we all are holding accountability with that. Yes, yes.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Appreciate Mr. Bradshaw. All right. Next up is going to be our panel discussion, and I'll introduce the folks that will be sitting on the panel. We'll have from the police department, Chief Charlie Morris. From the fire department will be Chief Lee Price, and we will have our assistant town manager, Andy Sneed, and our communications and public information officer, Mike Emery. All right. All right, so like I said in the beginning, a couple weeks ago, we asked on our town social media page for folks to submit questions for the conference tonight. We received a lot of questions and have formatted this panel to answer a wide range of questions that were submitted by everyone and be able to get the most information to you. If you have any questions that are not answered, please see someone after at the appropriate person vendor fair and we'll get an answer to you, okay? All right. So first up, we have Chief Charlie Morris. As an overview, what does the town of Oak Island do to prepare for a storm?
Thank you, Major. I appreciate the question. So to start off with, there's a lot of moving parts with the town government in preparation for the storm. First and foremost, in 2025, we have this educational opportunity for our community, and it also brings the town staff together to prepare us as well, to make sure that we have our best practices in place. So once we have a named storm and we've identified that storm and there's going to be a potential impact, we're looking at what we do is, as a town staff, we notify our town staff. We start communicating with the public. Like I said, 72 hours out. We're communicating through the website, text messages, social media, on the forecast. And really what we try to do is over-communicate. And I don't know if we can over-communicate, but we give it our best when we have an impending storm to provide you with the information before, during, and after the storm. So once in our preparations, we're holding departmental meetings. Each department ensures that we have adequate staffing to address the needs during a storm. We ensure our vehicles and all of our equipment are in good operating order. Each division or each department has a protocol that they go. We have a checklist that we go through in our operations plan, so we ensure that all those benchmarks are satisfied. One thing that you guys will see at the resource fair is the Emergency Operations Center that we put in place a couple years ago. So we'll activate that Emergency Operations Center, which that brings together the town manager, myself, the fire chief, and the department directors, and along with our communications manager, sitting at the table, and when we have to make decisions, we make sound decisions. We do our best to make well-informed decisions, And that's where that starts, is when we activate that Emergency Operations Center. And I don't want to forget that also the mayor participates, in that, in those discussions. When we're there in the Emergency Operations Center, we're of course monitoring the weather. We participate with conference calls with Brunswick County Emergency Management, along with our local neighboring agencies and jurisdictions and towns. So we know what they're doing and they know what we're doing, so we try to stay informed as much as possible. We are holding conference calls with our business community. And we're, of course, in season, we have a lot of events around town. We've got to discuss the cancellation of those events. There's a lot of resources that goes into putting on those events. And if we cancel them, we have to make sure that we make a good, sound decision, on that aspect. With the impending storm, our drone unit will fly the beachfront and certain areas in town, record, making us a video of before the storm occurs, that we have that documented. And I think the one thing that I want to emphasize tonight is the safety of our town. That's what drives our decisions, is the safety of our town, getting you guys the information that you need in a timely manner to make good, sound decisions, because that's how we want to end things. We want to be successful. A storm is very stressful on the community. Not only the community, the storm is stressful on the staff, not only myself, but our entire staff. We have a great staff here that's dedicated and that are all working for the same goal. So that's like a snapshot of how the town is preparing for a storm. We all come together and make the best decisions that we possibly can.
All right. We received a lot of questions on this topic. Mr. Sneed, with flooding and stormwater being a problem island-wide, what does the town do to prepare for a storm, and what is the response for flooding and stormwater after a storm?
The million-dollar question: how do we prevent flooding and stormwater inundation and runoff? For us, it's something that actually starts months in advance of hurricane season, not just a hurricane, but actually hurricane season. So to give you a snapshot in general of how we work, the stormwater crews typically work north to south and west to east. So we'll begin on Yacht Drive, starting on the west end, working our way east, move back to Oak Island Drive, Dolphin, Pelican, and then finally Beach Drive, with the goal of being at Beach Drive when the first hurricane gets here. So to give you a snapshot of where we're at right now, we are in about the 20th or so block of East Dolphin. So we're going to be done with Beach Drive before the first hurricane gets here. Hopefully it doesn't get here at all this year. Keep your fingers crossed. And then it's really actually a never-ending endeavor. So as soon as we finish there, we do it all over again. So it's an ongoing effort. So the kind of work I'm talking about are drainage ditches, catch basins, retainage areas, driveway culverts, and things of that nature. Mike Emery is going to talk to you a little bit about how to track what happens and what we're doing, what we're up to, where the problem areas are. And so that's a resource during and after the storm. I also want to add that long-term, stormwater management in a coastal community is a challenge because we're at sea level. So you go to many communities and you see stormwater conveyance, curb and gutter, that then go to catch basins under the streets, and you convey it to wherever you want it to go. It's very difficult for us to do that here because we're at sea level. Even more difficult is what happens for flooding. And so without launching into a really long discussion about what's flooding and what's stormwater, think of flooding as what happens when water gets in an area. Stormwater is the result of what falls out of the sky into the streets. So for us, it's a little bit different in how we treat storm-related runoff and what we do over on the ocean front when the ocean invades our front doors. So what we're working on now is a long-term strategy for a stormwater master plan. We're just in the very infant stages of getting that done. But the overall goal is to take a look at the town holistically and then think about how to make a plan and over time improve our overall situation.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, our next question is, one of the themes tonight is preparation and being prepared for a storm. Chief Price, what are the most important things residents and property owners can do on the island to protect their home from a storm?
Thank you, sir. Educate yourself and keep informed the severity of the storm and how bad it is going to be. Utilize the local website, utilize the town's website. While you can look at the National Weather Service, which is great information, and even Brunswick County, the county is large, and so what's happening down in Calabash might be different than what's happening here, and so utilizing the town's website for what's going on in the town is the best way to keep informed about that. In preparing for the storm, you want to move vehicles, you want to move golf carts, scooters, anything that has batteries in it, up and move it to higher ground. Last thing you want to do is have, especially an elevated house where you got a car parked underneath and a storm comes in and it gets flooded, that can cause issues. Turn off your propane tanks and secure them. The tanks that most people have sitting beside their house will float. If that tank starts to float away and the line breaks, then we have a propane leak. You want to secure those, strap them to something, strap them to a pole at the house, make sure that they are off and secure. Moving your flammable liquids away from your home in areas that's not going to be submerged underwater. One of the biggest things that we find year-round is people do not know their breaker box. You go in and you have an incident at the home or anything else, and you open up the breaker box and it's not labeled. You cut one thing off and it goes to something else. Know your breaker box. Securing your power during a storm is crucial, especially for areas at your home that might get flooded. And knowing your breaker box and what to cut off is very important. Tie down all the loose objects around your home is, as was said earlier, is people have trampolines, and when you have storms, your neighbors have trampolines. So you don't want your lawn furniture to wind up 3 doors down through somebody's window or in their car or something. And so that flying debris is definitely dangerous. And so keep it from flying and floating away.
All right, thank you, sir. Social media has become the platform where everyone gets their news and information. Mr. Emery, where can people go to get the most up-to-date and accurate information from the town before, during, and after a storm?
So the mindset that we take as far as, especially when it comes to emergency communication, is we do a one source model, and that is on the website. And you can see I've got a poster up there. There's a QR code, you can go to it. We have the storm response information page. During an emergency event, such as a hurricane or similar natural disaster, that becomes our one source of communication, our primary source of communication. We still employ all of the other tools that we have, such as social media, our email and text alert notifications, even OKI TV, our local television channel. But every single outlet that we have, think of it like a wheel. And the hub of that wheel is our storm response information page. Every other outlet that we have, Facebook, X, OKI TV, they're like spokes in that wheel, and they're gonna channel you back to that hub. So everything that we put out in the middle of an emergency situation is going to have some link or some way to get you back to that page. That page is going to be the singular source of information from the town. Doing that helps eliminate misinformation, both on purpose and by accident. Oftentimes, and this is something that I can share as a strong suggestion, if you see on local Facebook groups or other social media, people will take screenshots, or they'll copy the text and paste that into a post, or they'll take a screenshot of the page as it is and post it. That is something I strongly, strongly recommend against, because that information can become dated very quickly, but somebody several hours from now may see that screenshot and think it's current, or they may see text that's copied and think it's current. The better solution that helps everybody is just to share the link to that page. The general link to that page, you can see it on the screen here, is oakislandnc.gov/WX, which is shorthand for weather. Or if we have an event that's a named storm, we will create a custom URL and share that as well. But even if we don't have a named storm, that WX will get you there. Now, we have some really great tools that we've launched recently. We have the OKI information system, which is our email and emergency text alerts. You can sign up for that, and we'll send you those notifications directly. Or, if you haven't already, you can download the mobile app that the town has, which there's a QR code on that other poster over there. That is available on the App Store and Google Play. It's a wonderful app. It's very simple, very streamlined. You can click on it. It's full of, as our town manager likes to say, easy buttons that can just click you and get you wherever you want to go. But in an emergency situation, you'll see a bright red banner go across the top of that home screen on the mobile app, and that will get you directly to that storm response information page. So, in short, whenever we have any type of emergency event related to weather, such as a hurricane or even not a hurricane, as we learned with PTC 8, that storm response information page will be activated, and you can reach that at okilandnc.gov/WX, or we'll send out the notifications, or just use your mobile app, and you can click it right there. Because whenever that page is activated, we'll put a bright red banner across the top of your mobile app screen. And that's your best way to get the official information from the town on our response efforts.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, next question is for Chief Morris. One of the most asked questions when a storm is coming is, should I stay or should I evacuate? Can you explain to everyone the difference between a voluntary and a mandatory evacuation?
Sure. Thank you, Major. Before we get into the voluntary and mandatory evacuation, everyone has heard about declaring an emergency. And that's what towns do, cities and municipalities do. Then what that does, that grants officials the authority to take extra measures to protect the public health and the safety and the welfare of our community. And what specifically that means, that gives the towns the authority to evacuate, issue evacuation notices, street and bridge closures, certain business activities, curfews. So when you see that emergency declaration, that's what that is in place for. Additionally, that also triggers state and federal assistance to support our local efforts, with the storm. And when we declare that emergency, and that is done by Mayor White, she will sign the declaration for that. We do that for projected rainfall amounts. We forecast the storm surge because we'll declare the emergency before the storm gets to us. The wind speed, the storm size. So those are the aspects that come into play when the mayor signs a declaration of an emergency. So after that declaration of emergency, that's when you see the voluntary, the mandatory visitors, like we see up here on the screen, and the mandatory also. A voluntary evacuation, that recommends that where the weather conditions are likely to deteriorate, and we encourage you to seek alternative shelter. That's a voluntary evacuation. Mandatory visitor, that means our visitors and non-residents is their evacuation. And then the mandatory, that means all persons must evacuate the town. And the important thing about that is the mandatory evacuation is you may lose utilities, during a mandatory evacuation. Our emergency response may be suspended during there. So we may not be able to reach you, if we issue that type of declaration. So those are the differences, and that's how we get to the evacuations from the voluntary, mandatory, visitor, and the mandatory. It all starts with the declaration of emergency.
All right. Staying on evacuations, Chief Morris, if someone is evacuating, when do they need to leave, and what would be the best route leaving the island?
Okay, so everybody in this room lives local or lives close and understands the traffic congestion and the volume that we faced every day. Not only in season, but off season as well. So put that into context, about if you're going to evacuate. Importantly is have a plan. Have a plan moving forward about where you're going to go. Are you going to go to a shelter? Are you going to go to a family member's place? Are you going to go to a friend's home? That's very important to put that plan in place at that time. And due to the daily traffic congestion, give your time safe time to leave the area. And with that is prepare, not prepare for 1 or 2 days. We've had this conversation many times. You got to prepare for it to be away from your home for a number of days. And the longer you wait, and maybe that's what this question is about, is the longer you wait, how long is it going to take me to get away, get away from the storm? So that's important. The earlier that you leave, being smart with it, knowing the traffic congestion, knowing the volume of traffic is incredibly important, today, especially in the area that we live in. Also important is during the storms, we're going to be posting, our communications manager, he's going to be posting up our routes, the evacuation routes. He's going to be posting up the shelters. So we're going to be providing that information, on our platforms, so you will be aware of that. But our evacuation routes all lead to Highway 17, 211, 87, and 133. Those are our evacuation routes that lead to Highway 17. And of course, all of our evacuation routes contain that same size, the hurricane evacuation route. You see that, on our routes to Highway 17. And once again, if folks choose to stay, you may not have certain resources, and emergency services may not be able to respond, and certain utilities may not be available to you. So all that comes into play, with your decision to evacuate.
All right, thank you, sir. Now, the number one question of my career, anytime a storm is coming. Chief Morris.
All right, here we go.
Bridge closing.
Now put me in the hot seat here about the bridge closure. Let me first tell you from the town's leadership is that we do not want to close either bridge. When and if we do close the bridge, it is a dire safety need to close that bridge. Now, once again, we just talked about the evacuation routes and the traffic congestion. If we close that bridge, we have tens of thousands of cars that travel those bridges each and every day. And off-season is not as much, however, it's still heavily congested. However, in season, our population doubles here. So putting that into context to close the bridge and man that's an incredible decision that we will make. However, we're going to do everything not to close the bridge. But however, we will close that bridge if conditions become too safe to cross it. One thing is we will give you as much time as we can when the decision is made to close the bridge. As you can see in this picture here, when we had PTC 8, we had very little warning. With a hurricane, we've got a couple days notice. With this last one here, we closed the Barbie Bridge and did not close the Middleton Bridge here. And let me pause here and discuss the bridge closure. That decision is made by the mayor of Oak Island and the mayor of Caswell Beach in a collaborative effort. However, they rely specifically on the information from each respective staff to make that informed decision. Now, we closed the Barbie Bridge with PTC 8. We kept it closed for about 3 hours. And as you can see, the reason we closed that is you could not leave. If you crossed the bridge, you could not travel up Long Beach Road. So that's why we closed that bridge. So one message that I want to be clear about is that if those bridges close, there's a dire need to close those bridges. So I want that message to be very clear, tonight. So what constitutes the bridge closure? What's the criteria that we evaluate that? We have a sustained wind of 40, 45 miles an hour, unsafe road conditions, and this overall unsafe conditions as well. But of course, if we have a storm that's bearing down on us and it hits the island, the bridges are going to more than likely get closed as the storm moves in on us. Not many people are on the road at that time anyway. However, it's after the fact that, that we're dealing with the excess traffic. So, but we will open, if it's safe, the storm comes through, we will get that bridges opened up as quickly as possible. What we will do, in necessary, we will close down streets, on the island. We'll close them down in zones in lieu of closing the entire bridge. So if we've got certain streets that are impacted, we're not going to close down the Middleton Bridge, just for that. We're going to close down the areas that are impacted, that's flooded, and forego closing the actual bridge itself. So we talk about the criteria of closing the bridge, and so we close the bridge. What does our re-entry process look like? And we hopefully, we will avoid the re-entry process. Like I said, we're going to try to keep the bridges open as long as we can because of the volume of traffic. It's stressful on our community, and we understand that, as the leadership team. Because thousands of cars cross that bridge every day. So if the re-entry is enacted, we will communicate that message, and you will know what we know, and we will provide that information to you. And like I said, one bridge may need to be closed, and the other one will remain open. That's just kind of unpredictable, and I don't want to paint myself in a box here because the storms are unpredictable, and we don't know until the storm hits what's going to be affected. So if we need to close one bridge and not close the other bridge, then that's what we'll do. However, we will communicate that message. During our reentry, some senior staff at the police department, Sergeant DeMello and Major Cook, have probably more storm experience than anybody at our police department. And we also have the assistant fire chief has been here many, many years. We took a look last year at the using stickers or decals during our reentry process. And I know Sergeant DeMello reached out to agencies from Florida trying to find a model for us, what works for, best for us. And because what works best for us may not work good somewhere else, and what works for somebody else may not work for us. We're not a small town. We have 10,000 plus full-time residents, and running a decal system, it would be very taxing, to do that, or a sticker system for our re-entry passes. So in the conclusion, after Sergeant DeMello done her study on this, it came back that we would stick with what has worked here and what has been used here in the past. And if we enact the reentry program, then as you come back onto the island, of course, the valid government issued photo ID, your tax or utility bill with matching information, would be used. That would be the mechanism to get you back on the island, in lieu of a fixed sticker to your car or a window hanger, something like that. So that's that's the route that we are moving forward with, at this time. So if we do that, just make sure in preparation that you have them documents ready. Before you leave, make sure you have something that will get you back on the island if we do have to enact a re-entry process. I think that's about it. So the last thing I'll say, and I want to repeat, and this is the first thing that I said, when we first started this, is that we do not want to close the bridges. And, but however, we will if it means keeping our community safe. And those are hard decisions to make, and they will be made carefully, and many options will be weighed out. The leadership team of the town will advise the mayor of each aspect of it, and then we will make the best informed decision moving forward, and importantly, we will communicate that decision to you and as we progress through the storm.
All right, thank you for that one. All right, this next question is probably the most important one we have on the list if you're on the fence of evacuating or staying. So Once a storm is here, if you have decided to stay, it's important to know if you end up needing to call 911 for help, will anyone be responding? Chief Price, when will the fire department stop responding to emergency calls?
As we're sitting, as the storm comes in, we're all sitting in the EOC, we have it set up, we have communications areas set up. We evaluate each call of assistance during the storm, from the beginning of the storm all the way to the end. The standard answer is that we will cease responding once tropical storm force winds 40 miles an hour sustained are achieved. I believe that I talked with one of the EMS people, it's when the ambulances stop responding is tropical storm force sustained winds at 40 miles an hour. And that is typically, and that is the standard answer that we will give, is that 40 mile an hour sustained is when we'll stop responding. We do evaluate every call that comes in to make sure that we can make a difference, because if we can't get there, if the road is flooded, if the road is even there, because you can't tell, as talked about earlier, if it's flooded, if there's trees down or other hazards that may pose a risk to responders or other people, we might not be able to come see you. That's why evacuations are so important, is there does come a time in storms that we can't go. And so if you have a medical emergency or you have some other emergency and you're there, we might not be able to assist you. We will make every effort to assist you. But as the storm strengthens, there comes a time where we have to draw the line.
All right. That same question, Chief Morris, when will the police department stop responding?
Yeah, I think Chief Price summed it up there. We are going to try to respond. And we are, to back up just a little bit, we have staff that is staffed, ready to respond, and we will respond if we can do it safely. We have the fire department. The fire department has a new high water vehicle that the town purchased last year, which can be used in rescue operations and also in emergency situations. However, I want to leave you with that. We will do our best. We want to respond. We want to help you, and that's what we're here for. And we're staffed to help you. However, sometimes it gets out of our control, and we may not be physically able, to reach you. And but however, just know, as we move away from this question, is that the emergency services here in Oak Island stand ready to help you any way we possibly can, and we will. And so, and we'll end it with that. I don't have anything else. Yep.
All right, thank you. All right, during the last couple of storms, unfortunately, there have been multiple houses that have caught fire during the storm. Chief Price, what is the reason for these homes catching fire during a storm, and what can homeowners do to prevent this?
Well, there are multiple reasons that fires can occur during a storm, whether it be accidental or misuse of something. One thing that you need to make sure of is that be extremely careful if you're cooking during a storm. The best thing to do is not cook during the storm. Prepare meals and utilize those. Sandwiches and canned items. Definitely do not cook inside your home like with a grill. We've seen that before. People pull the grill in the garage or inside the enclosed area in the back, and they go to cooking. They haven't cleaned it in 6 months, and it flares up, and next thing you know, there's a bad situation. Do not use charcoal to cook prior to or during the storm. That's not a good thing, and especially if you cook with it and everything goes good, a lot of people forget about that it needs quite a bit of time to cool down, and they throw it in the nice plastic recycling can or whichever, the trash can, and next thing you know, it melts down, and you've got an issue there too. So, as talked about earlier, don't use candles. This is a very dog-friendly island, and you got a candle sitting there in the middle of a storm, the dog knocks it over and it catches the drapes on fire, the couch on fire. That's another bad situation. Don't use candles. Don't use any type of lanterns with flame. Use battery-powered illumination. Secure all the power. We talked about that earlier. Know your breaker box. Is if you leave the breakers on and it floods downstairs and you have an electrical problem, it could cause a fire. Make sure you secure your power. If you do have a fire that occurs, dial 911 immediately. Make some sort of notification. Make it as quick as you can. Don't try to go grab the garden hose and put it out and it gets worse, because if it's during the storm, you're going to have some wind, and everyone knows what the wind does to the fires around here. Be aware of lightning. Lightning is definitely a probable condition during a storm, and so be very aware of that. Unplug electrical components. If you are using a generator, it was touched on earlier, you need to refuel it every now and then. Let it cool down before you refuel it, and for goodness sake, do not try to refuel it with it running. People do that, it has happened. Never backfeed your power. And as it was said earlier, you know, standing out in the middle of a storm, I've done that too. I've backfed, and people come up with some very ingenious ways of doing things in times of emergency. But don't backfeed your power. Make sure that something is your right cords, manufacturer's recommendations, you know, that kind of thing. But the biggest thing is just use your common sense on fire safety. You know, cooking inside the home, that's one of the biggest things. The generator in the garage was talked about. You let the generator run at night, it's in the garage, CO fills the house, and you have a chance of not waking up the next morning. So a lot of these questions, if you have any more questions about that, we'll be glad to answer them after the meeting, but those are some of the key things that need to be addressed.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Sneed, some residents are concerned with the utilities here on the island, specifically water and sewer. What would water or sewer services be shut off or affected by a storm?
Well, this is where I really appreciate Chief Morris taking the hardest question first. And what I would say is I've been with the town, and I tell people what I do for a living here. The first question they ask me is, how do I get a building permit? The second one is, when a hurricane hits, am I going to be able to drink water, take a shower, and flush the toilet? So let's take the first part first. I don't anticipate any water service interruption. We get our water from the county. Over time, historically, that's something that's been very reliable, so I would not anticipate any interruption of water service. Next part gets a little trickier. As some of you may know, we have part of our sewer system is a vacuum system. So the portion on the ocean front, zones 1, 2, and 3, it's a little hard to see on that map, but if you can think essentially from the Davis Canal to the beach side to the west end, that is the portion of the vacuum system. Vacuum systems are susceptible, in particular because of their location, but also because they do draw in. And so if you have a rupture or have high water, you can get seawater into that vacuum system. And we cannot pump that off the island to the county until we have cleared that seawater infiltration from that system. So what does that mean? What that means is in the event of a mandatory evacuation, almost certainly, we will have a planned interruption of zones 1, 2, and 3. So think from the Davis Canal to the ocean front. And the reason for that is we can do a brief planned interruption that might be a couple, 3 days versus something that would be a much longer extended outage if we did have contamination of that system. A major contamination could take weeks to bring everything back online. So a couple of things I would say. I would also echo Chief Morris's statement that that's the last thing that we want to do. So, you know, we're going to do everything we can to make that as brief as possible. An interruption would probably be, you know, a half a day or so ahead of when the expected landfall is. Some of that's going to depend on the timing of anticipated impact and landfall. And then it's probably going to take us 2 or 3 days to get everything back up and running. The other areas of the island, I think, probably will be just fine and not be interrupted, as has historically been the case. So here's your takeaway. There's 2 things. Pay attention to what Mr. Emery down there at the end of the table has to say and the way that he told you to communicate with the town, because we will publicize it ahead of time and let those folks know that we're going to do that ahead of time. This might be the second most important thing. That might be the most important thing. What happens if, because you're going to have water, right? Remember I said your water service is probably not going to be interrupted. So if you don't have sewer service and you go to take a shower and you flush your toilet and you run water down the sink, what's going to happen? If it doesn't have anywhere to go, it's going to stay in your house, isn't it? Okay. So for those of you in those zones, please pay attention and be very conscious of putting things down the drain through the toilet and through the sinks.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, Mr. Emery's got the next one. If someone has evacuated due to a storm, where can they go to find road closure maps to get back to the island or road closures on the island?
So we have links to all of our municipal, regional partner agencies, both with neighboring towns such as Castle Beach, as well as the county, and even the state. We have links to all of the state mandated evacuation routes. As far as getting out of town, again, I'm going to sound like a little bit of a broken record, but I'm going to keep pointing you back to that storm response information page, because on that page, we will not only have links to whatever information is being produced by the county and the state, but also information for the town, that hyper-local evacuation information, because as the chief alluded to earlier, we may close one bridge but leave another open. Many of you may have seen where literally from one end of the island to the other, it can be a drastically different scenario as far as what you're getting weather-wise. So on that page, we will have that information about where and how you need to get on or off the island itself, and then how you can go to connect in with those main evacuation routes, like the chief said, pretty much getting you to Highway 17. And from our case, it would be to get you to 211 and then Highway 17 and that. So again, not to sound like a bit of a broken record, but that's that one source of communication where we're gonna have that information to you. And if in the event that we do have to have, as the chief was talking about earlier, a bridge closure as part of those evacuations, all that information will be reiterated in detail on that page for you to know exactly when, where, why, and how those closures take place and how to get back on once they will be reopened again. So sorry to sound like a bit of a broken record, but I'm going to keep pointing you back to that.
All right, thank you, sir.
Yeah, I'd like to add just
Okay.
a little bit to more than what Mike said. One aspect, when we had PTC 8, our drone pilot flew many of our streets and was able to record a lot of our flooding, and then our communications manager would post that up for everyone to see. And that is such a valuable resource, there. So if you're not here, if you're or you have somebody who is evacuated and you talk about the road closures, hopefully we'll have a visual representation, if possible, posted up that will support the written text.
Yeah.
So I think that worked out really well last year when our drone pilot flew that and provided that valuable communication and that valuable piece of information for all of us.
Especially with some of those flooded areas that blocked off, like the Barbie Bridge, and then some of the flooding up where towards the Midway area.
Yep, that's right.
They were able to visually see that.
Right.
All right, after the storm is cleared, that is when the work begins for all employees and departments in the town. Mr. Sneed, after the storm has cleared, the town conducts damage assessments. What is the purpose of these damage assessments?
So really, the purpose of the damage assessments are really twofold. The first is to do an initial damage assessment to help inform not only emergency response, but to support the emergency declaration if made, and for supporting information as we begin disaster recovery and look for funds to help in that recovery. The second thing is that when we identify major damage to residents and buildings, we will make notification to those property owners and be ready to perform building inspections. And the primary focus of those building inspections would be habitability. Is it safe to be there? And so those are the two primary goals of a damage assessment. Do you want me to talk about the storm debris at this point also?
I think those slides got reversed.
I'm going to go off script here. There we go. So this isn't scripted at all, right? So, but I suspected maybe this question was coming. So it's related to storm debris. So what do we do, right? Hurricane comes through. What does the town do? So as soon as it's safe to work, the town will begin debris pickup. Most of you are probably familiar with our curbside pickup program, where we pick up leaves and limbs and general yard debris. Well, think of that. This effort after a hurricane is kind of like that on steroids. And so we will take larger volumes and larger items. So normally we would not take, say, a tree that has fallen. So we would not take a tree that residents have cut up and put on the side of the road and pick that up typically. After a storm, we will do that. And it's going to take us a while to get around, and the length of time it takes for that greatly depends on the storm, the amount of damage, and the situations around it. The other thing that I'll just mention is that if we do have big storms and we do have a lot of debris, it could be that we would identify staging areas for that for residents that want they want somewhere to put it. They want to help. They want somewhere to get it out of their yard. Some of you may remember we had a staging area close to the Elks at Middleton in that vacant lot. So if we have large amounts of that, that's something that we would look to try and do as well. Let me mention that we will not pick up, say, household items. So if you have a deck, you have a porch, you have damage, and you're trying to get it repaired, we're not going to haul off construction debris. If you have a couch under your front porch that got wet, and you want to throw it away, we're not going to pick that up. That needs to go to the landfill or some other place that accepts that form of debris and waste.
All right. Thank you, sir. Something happened to the slides.
Go back one. Yeah. That was the last question.
Yep. All right, so the last question is, one of the most requested services after a storm for people who have evacuated or have homes here that do not live here is they call and ask if we can go by and check their house for them. All right. So while we do not have enough people to fill all those requests, of course, Mr. Emery, will the town provide live footage after the storm of the entire town, before or after, anything like that?
So as the chief alluded to or mentioned earlier, we really started pushing that heavily last year, and it really came into its own during PTC 8. We have a wonderful drone unit that works under the fire department, and we are very proud of that and the efforts that have been made to improve that program, and really some groundbreaking stuff that we're doing with that program there. We have the ability, if need be, to put live video, but we will never, unless it is a drastic situation, we will never show true live video. We will show it as accurately and quickly as possible. It may be a delay of literally just shoot it, and as soon as it's done, we immediately upload it. Without getting too graphic, though, in a disaster situation, we don't really want to have just an uncut live feed to the public, because sometimes, unfortunately, you may see things on a live feed when you're viewing disasters that you don't want the public to see and people don't really need to see. However, that said, we will make every effort to put information in that video content as quickly as possible, almost like a live to tape kind of situation where it's near as makes no difference to being live. So that is a very high priority. Both Chief Price and Chief Morris have made it a very strong commitment that they've seen the value of it, how people can have that little bit of comfort in seeing, okay, well, that's the area where I live and that's my home, and oh gosh, is that underwater? So even if it's not good news, at least having that lets you know where things stand. And they both recognize the importance of that and how it provides people with information on their homes. So it is a priority, and it is something that we will do and continue to increase those efforts to come. We won't, like I said, we won't necessarily be straight live for obvious reasons, but we will get stuff out as quickly as possible. And again, it will all be sourced in that one location right there on the storm response information page. I think that was
All right. That concludes our Q&A session, and thank you to the panelists for everything. And again, if you have any questions that weren't answered or throughout the night you've come up with a question, if you'll get with one of us during the vendor fair, we'll do our best to answer it. All right? Thank you. All right. Next up, we have Mr. Steve Pfaff from the National Weather Service. He will give us an in-depth look at forecasting storms, general information, and hurricane safety. I'll let everybody know I've attended several events Mr. Pfaff has spoke at, and he is a wealth of knowledge. And when it comes to storms of any kind, we talked to him in the EOC during hurricanes, and we even talked to him during the snowfall this past time. He's like I said, a wealth of knowledge, and we're very fortunate to have him here in southeastern North Carolina as a weather forecaster. So, Mr. Steve Pfaff.
Good evening, everyone. Hope you're doing well. I'm very excited and grateful to be here to share some information with you. And more importantly, I'm grateful that you're here to learn more. You know, our mission with the National Weather Service is protection of life and property with respect to weather hazards. And that's through forecasts, through warnings, but it's also through building resiliency in our communities. You know, are we prepared? Are we prepared with communications access? Are we prepared with, if you have a pet and you need to take shelter, do you know where you're going to go? But you being here helps build the resiliency because we expect you to be force multipliers with the information that you've learned tonight. I've been with the National Weather Service for coming on 31 years now, 27 years of which at the Wilmington office. Our office is located at the airport up there in New Hanover County. We have a staff of about 19 people that live in our communities. The staff that I'm in charge of leading are just incredibly dedicated, passionate about weather, passionate about sharing information, passionate about getting you the information that you need to make life savings decisions or ways to protect your house if a storm is threatening. So 31 years, I could say I wish I saw it all. PTC 8, not even a named storm, and look what it did to Brunswick County. Tropical Storm Allison in Texas coast, over 50 inches of rain a couple decades ago. I thought I saw it all with Hurricane Florence. I was the lead forecaster at the time when Floyd made landfall in 1999. 20 inches of rain, can't surpass that, can we? Florence, 2018, just unbelievable the rainfall. We have Doppler radar estimates that we feel are really accurate that shows parts of Brunswick County and Columbus County 35 to 40 inches of rain. So it's just, a past FEMA director said we're good at preparing for what we've seen before, but not for what we haven't seen before or in a long time. And I believe that's true, and we're gonna talk about that more later on when I talk about when are we gonna get the return of a major hurricane, a category 3, 4, or 5. Category 1s can be catastrophic, but what about that windstorm? When can we expect that? So before we move forward, let's talk a little bit about what the National Weather Service does. I often get asked, well, what TV station are you on? I'm on none of them unless they want to interview me about something. I'll be interviewed about tsunamis, PTC 8, the Doppler radar in Charlotte, you name it. You might see me on WWAY or WECT from time to time. But overall, we're part of the Department of Commerce under the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. There's 122 weather forecast offices around the country that provide the number of warnings and forecasts that you see up there. All of those offices, 1.5 million forecasts every year, 50,000 warnings per year. The average year, we see 10,000 severe thunderstorms, 800 tornadoes, 14 tropical storms, named storms at least, 7 of which become hurricanes, 4 of which become categories 3, 4, or 5, and $20 billion catastrophic flood disasters. In our area, since 1999, we have seen, I think now 9 of the quote-unquote 500 to 1,000-year flood events. Since 1999, that many. Something is going on. A lot of efforts that we do outside of hurricane season, even during community engagement, outreach, working with emergency management, with tabletop exercises and their planning, after action reports after a storm. I was up in Lumberton this morning for the North Carolina Emergency Management Area 5 meeting with all of our emergency management partners. Hurricane preparedness is 365 days a year for us and our partners. It's not just the storm's coming, okay, we ramp everything up. A lot goes on behind the scenes. As far as the cost for what you get from our agency, $4 a year is what it costs for us to run all of that above and all the outreach and all the forecasting and the warnings. All right, let's look back at 2024. It stunk if you lived in the Gulf Coast. 5 landfalling hurricanes in the Gulf Coast. Beryl early on in the Texas coast. It was July 8th, as a matter of fact, and it was the earliest on record Category 4 hurricane in the Caribbean. It was early July. It hit Category 4 intensity. Then Debbie, which made landfall on the northeast Gulf Coast, and then we had another landfall in South Carolina as a tropical storm. We had to deal with the flooding from that. And then we had Francine, a Category 2 in Louisiana. Helene, which I'm going to show you some images from in northeast Florida again, but caused a lot of damage into the western parts of the Carolinas and Tennessee and Virginia. And then Milton, which occurred late season, October 9th, the Category 3 at landfall on the west coast of Florida. So really active season. For us, though, we had the bands of Helene that produced some tornadoes. We had Tropical Storm Debbie with flash flooding. We did have a fatality in Lumberton, or Robeson County, Columbus County line. Someone swept away in a vehicle. But for the most part, and then PTC 8, but for the most part, our area didn't see any extreme wind type of situations. When you look at last year's direct fatalities, and we distinguish direct versus indirect. Direct fatality is either a function of the storm surge, the strong winds, tornado, or the flooding. Historically, storm surge is the #1 related hurricane killer. You know, a lot of people along the coast, the water comes up, we don't have gills, we can't breathe in water, and you know, it's no wonder that these water hazards are #1. Within the last couple decades, the #1 hurricane hazard has been freshwater flooding. And in the Carolinas, you have to pretty much drive to find your death from freshwater flooding. We're not having homes swept away in the coastal plains. It's people that are out driving that shouldn't be. We lost someone during PTC 8 as well. Someone drove around barricades and got swept away in the flooding there. But with Helene, there were over 100 freshwater flood fatalities. They just found someone 2 weeks ago in the eastern Tennessee. It's just, and that includes mudslides, that one. 79 wind fatalities. This is the most in a year since 1963. 10 from tornadoes, second most in 1 year, only 2004. And there are 14 storm surge fatalities, all in the Tampa area. But we see a whole list of hazards, those direct impacts from rip currents. The storm might be 3 days away, but the swells are coming in, and the county's dealing with rip currents and high surf as a result of that. It's just what a shame that these numbers are here in spite of really good forecast information. So it tells me we're not there with our story yet. So as far as Helene goes, made landfall 10 miles west-southwest of Perry, Florida as a Cat 4, sustained winds of 140 miles per hour. Can you imagine seeing that? 93 fatalities were from Helene, freshwater and mudslides, 65 from the wind, storm surge 14, 2 from tornadoes. So compared to the previous slide, most of the fatalities we've had from hurricane season last year were from Helene. It had the most direct deaths in the U.S. since Katrina back in 2005. Most of Katrina's fatalities were storm surge. Most direct deaths in the most freshwater fatalities in the U.S. since Agnes back in 1972. That was a Texas storm. Most wind fatalities since 1963. Indirect fatalities we had were 68. So let's talk a little bit more about indirect fatalities, because both the police chief and the fire chief mentioned those hazards. So an indirect fatality is someone who has died as a result of the storm coming or exiting the area and impacting the area. A candle catching a fire and a family's trapped in a house. Carbon monoxide poisoning from the grill that's being used to cook in the garage. Maybe a poorly vented generator type of thing. We see an uptick in cardiac arrests because power is out, people don't have a way to cool down. So you see heat-related illnesses and an increase in cardiac issues. So those would be indirect fatalities. And Helene costs $80 billion, and they're still adding up the damage in some areas. So here are the indirect fatalities by state from Helene. Most were medical issues, vehicle accidents, fires, and debris cleanup. Chainsaws, things like that, maybe falling off the roof of your home, taking debris off your roof, fixing the roof, those sorts of things. This was the estimated peak wind gust swath from Helene. Helene made landfall northeast Gulf, but there were over 100 plus mile per hour winds 350 miles inland from where it made landfall. Just unprecedented. In the news, we saw a lot about the flooding and the mudslides and the roads washed away, but lost in all of that was the large swaths, hundreds of square miles, if I had to compare it, hundreds of square miles of EF1 tornado-like damage in Columbia forecast area. CAE is Columbia's forecast area, into parts of FFC, which is Atlanta's forecast area in Charleston, where it came up, just incredibly strong winds. The purple is 100+ mile-per-hour winds there. So what did some of that look like? And it might be hard to see this a little bit, but this is along the Savannah River, the Georgia-South Carolina border, northwest of Augusta. This is what it was like before Helene's winds moved through. And that's what it was like after. So when the folks from the town are talking about debris management can be an absolute nightmare, let alone not being able to get anywhere to put your debris because everything is flooded over time. Here's another one of the power grid before Helene, and then after it moved through, millions of people without power. And I think it might be hard to see, but in South Carolina, there were over 1 million people without power. And when you have that strong a wind and that much damage to your infrastructure, it's not a 2-hour power outage. It's like a 2 to 3 week power outage that you run into at something like this. So some of the lessons learned from Helene: far inland areas can't escape hurricanes. If you get one that's strong enough and is moving fast enough, it will translate a lot of that wind energy far inland. Hazel in 1954 made landfall not far from here in Calabash. Some of the wind records on the East Coast, all the way up the Mid-Atlantic into New England, are still in place today were from Hurricane Hazel. So that's how powerful that storm is. The Category 4 was the strongest storm on record to strike North Carolina going back to the late 1700s. So widespread impacts can create difficulties, the debris issues in getting what supplies people need, what response is needed to help people. Makes it a very challenging situation when you can't access anything with power lines down, roads blocked, roads washed away, those sorts of things. So be mindful if you do evacuate. During Fran in '96, a lot of people evacuated to Raleigh. Well, if you were here during Fran, where did Fran go after it made landfall in the Cape Fear area? Right up to Raleigh, with 100-mile-per-hour winds inland there as well. So, move at right angles to where the storm is going, not just focusing on where it makes landfall. I know that's important for a community here along the coast, but also where you find yourself displaced, evacuating, go at right angles to that and prepare early. You can always book a hotel room and cancel it. So when there's that uncertainty in the forecast days out, at least you have a plan versus waiting to the last second. Freshwater flood dangers messaging are still challenges, growing, and as well as the growing indirect fatalities that we see. Everything from chainsaw injuries to carbon monoxide poisoning. I think we do a good job talking about the direct aspects of a storm, but we're not thinking about afterwards, working in teams, checking on your neighbor like was brought up earlier. We have to stand up for each other big time after a storm moves through. So just some basic terminology, you might hear these, and I encourage you to visit the National Hurricane Center. They talk about these in their discussions, and they have tropical outlooks and things like that, and they'll talk about tropical disturbances, and tropical wave would be the next tier of that. Basically, a tropical wave is just an area of unorganized thunderstorms, showers and thunderstorms over the open water. And for the Atlantic Basin, it's the Caribbean, the Gulf, or the Atlantic Ocean itself. Not all tropical waves will turn into a tropical storm or a hurricane. The conditions have to be right. The wind shear has to be very light over the thunderstorms. If the wind is blowing too hard over the thunderstorms, picture a thunderstorm moving up through the atmosphere. If the wind is too strong, it blows the tops of the thunderstorms off, and they don't last all that long, and the pressure never drops in it. So not all tropical waves become tropical depressions, which is now we're starting to see some organization. A low pressure has to be closed in its circulation. So in the northern part of the low, it's a northeasterly wind. On the southern part, it's a southwesterly wind. It's showing that counterclockwise circulation in the northern hemisphere that we see with low pressure systems. The tropical depression is about the time the Hurricane Center will begin advisories on this. Will become a tropical storm, will become a hurricane, where's it going to go, those sorts of things, and the information that they're providing. If the sustained winds increase to 38 miles per hour. And I know we use 40 miles per hour sustained for a lot of the actions that we do. It's just easier to remember 40 versus 38. But any sustained winds 38 to 73 miles per hour, it is a tropical storm and it's given a name. The names are recycled every 6 years unless the storm has significant impacts. So we're never going to see another Helene. Unfortunately, we will see another Isaias. So start practicing, because next year, the phonetics for Isaias, it's going to be back in stock. So here's a tropical storm off Georgia there. You can kind of see a better circulation with it. Then once it has sustained winds 74 miles per hour or higher, extremely organized, eventually the pressure drops, sinking air in the center of the eye forms, intense updrafts outside the eye or the eye wall. This is when it becomes a hurricane. And then there's a Saffir-Simpson scale that ranks hurricane speed only from Category 1, your weak Saffir-Simpson scale hurricane, to Category 5, like Hurricane Andrew, Hurricane Michael, where it's just, again, I emphasize speed. So you should never say, I'm only doing this if it's a Category 2 or 3 or 4. You're going to evacuate, you're going to prepare your family and your homes based on the impacts and your risk. We talked about risk before. If you have a house that's surrounded by 50 giant pine trees and the ground is soaked, saturated, and it's only going to take 50-mile-per-hour winds to knock trees down, can you predict where those trees are going to fall around your house? I couldn't. So anytime the wind is up, you want to get yourself away from the outer walls and windows, centermost part of your house, lowest floor. If you live on a house on stilts, it's still the floor above the pilings. You're not going to go outside and shelter below that. Watches and warnings. So I look at this as, there's some great analogies to watches and warnings. A watch means conditions are possible, and then the warning means they're expected or likely, and there's a time duration within 48 hours, conditions possible for a watch, and within a warning within 36 hours. Think of it this way: if you've ever baked a pie before, you have ingredients. You set the ingredients out on the counter. That's basically the watch. Your conditions are favorable for a pie to be cooked real soon, basically. So now the warning is the pie is in the oven, all the ingredients are together, and you're going to have to take some actions. I don't have many jokes in meteorology, so I get by with what I can here. As far as the tropical hazards, and we've mentioned those, of these, who wants to take a stab at which is the longest duration hazard that we see of all these listed? Someone want to raise their hand and take a guess? The river flooding, right? Yeah. And no elevation in the coastal plains, it could take weeks for the Waccamaw to clear out, or Town Creek, or some of the other rivers that we have. And then add the tidal contribution to it, and the water levels yo-yo, basically. I already gave you the answer. Let's see if you're paying attention. The last couple decades, which has killed the most people of the remaining 4 hazards there? Inland rainfall and flooding. Yeah. Which of these do you think we have very little lead time to have people take action of the remaining 3? Yeah, tornado. Tropical cyclone tornadoes form in the lower part of the bands, and as a result, we have less time to detect them on radar, and they're moving at 40 miles an hour. So lead time is minimal during that situation. Which has the greatest potential loss of life historically because of people living along the coast? Storm surge does. And we have a lot of evacuations as a result of storm surge. And which is the only one that's the Saffir-Simpson scale describes? High winds. Obviously, I want you to know the Saffir-Simpson scale is only good for one aspect of the storm, and that should not be the only thing that shapes your decisions. This was taken from my counterpart. It might be hard to see it. My counterpart in the Morehead City office was at Hookerton, North Carolina, after Matthew, and he superimposed the flooding on there. So let's look at the picture first, then we'll look through some of the bullet points there. So we mentioned before, is the road there or not? You know, this is at least daytime we can see this. What if you encounter something like this at night? Turn around, don't drown, find another way. I tell my family, I don't care if I see it for 3 months. I'd rather see in 3 months than never again. 3 years. Let's add on until I want to see them again. I don't want them to take a risk through this. The road might be washed out. The weight of your vehicle might collapse the road. The water, if it's 6 inches deep or higher and flowing, can push on the wheels and the wheel wells and push your car off the roadway. But oftentimes you have something like this that's going on. We saw that a lot, PTC 8. You get complete failures, scours, bridges wash away, and ultimately most of these are where the culvert pipes are, finds a weakness. And it erodes, the flowing water erodes the roadbed over the culvert pipe and under the road surface, scours it away, and you drive along and collapse it. This was during Hurricane Floyd, 1999, near Hallsborough Middle School. See the car getting pushed? He's not turning, he's getting pushed. Even the truck is getting pushed. Luckily, somehow, he gets traction again and drives out of that. Just very, very lucky. They're lucky they didn't collapse the road. It takes about, like I said, 6 inches of flowing water for a car and 10 to 12 inches for a truck or maybe a bigger SUV. But the weight of an SUV or a truck is heavier than a car, so you might collapse it there. So you have people taking risks like this for whatever the reason may be. Concerns for Southeast North Carolina and Northeast South Carolina. My office has forecast responsibility for 8 counties in Northeast South Carolina. And when you plot the last major hurricane I mentioned was Hurricane Fran in 1996, we're coming up on 3 decades. 29 years this season will be since we had Hurricane Fran. Any of you here during Hurricane Fran or in the area? Couple of you, Raleigh, or at least impacted by it. When you look at return periods for the Cape Fear area, going back to the 1846, I think the data goes to, and you look and determine how many years does it take to go by before another major hurricane hits, it's 23 years for Cape Fear. So if you're into the law of averages like I am, we're due for that wind impact storm. We've had the rain ones, and sooner or later I'm going to be right. I'll come back every year and say, okay, it's 31 years, 32 years, 33 years, 34, 35. I'll do it as long as it takes. Sooner or later I'm going to be right. The reason why I know I'm going to be right is because we have a history of them before, and we're going to have more in our history. So that resiliency in the communities, the reason why you're here to learn what the town's going to do and what you should do is so important, because it's going to come back. I wish I could tell you when. I have a hard enough time getting the temperature right 4 days from now, let alone when the hurricanes are going to come through. I'm not one of our better forecasters. I like to be very deprecating, basically. I live by that. Okay, so tremendous amount of growth. Population infrastructure, do you think our area has grown much in the last 5 years? Yeah. Do you think that's going to be a problem? Yeah. So that is one aspect. The law of averages, it's been a long time since we've had a hurricane with the wind impacts and significant storm surge impacts. Hazel, just to give you an idea, Hurricane Hazel, when it made landfall in Brunswick County, 18-foot still water surge, not including the breaking waves on top of it. 18 feet. That's just crazy. Almost every home in all Brunswick County's barrier islands, they weren't on stilts back then. Those storms in the 50s shaped the building code today, but almost every home in the barrier islands was gone from Hazel. From Calabash area, Sunset Beach, all the way to Southport and Caswell Beach and Yaupon and whatever we called it back then. The other thing that's challenging for us is an incredibly huge amount of misinformation on social media. I look like I do because of the misinformation on social media. I'm like a spent fuel rod, I was telling someone earlier. Whenever you start seeing people posting that has like an ego issue to it, that's a red flag. What the Weather Service isn't telling you, what the local media isn't telling you, why in the heck would we not be telling you? Stuff like that. We're trying to protect lives and property. These people on Billy Bob's weather page and some of these other things want your clicks and your likes, and they hope you perpetuate it. Some of it's nefarious. After Hurricane Harvey hit Texas, caused all that devastation, people were actually taking the Hurricane Center graphics and showing the plot of Irma towards where Harvey made landfall. And it did such, and that was years ago, and it looked great now. With AI, it's even more frightening because AI knows my voice. AI has my picture from the internet. Someone can say, have Steve Paff doing a briefing for a major hurricane making landfall in Cape Fear on August 5th, and it'll do it. So you got to be very careful. Like was mentioned before, go to the source of credible information. Unless you know that source being pushed to you is credible, like Everbridge and some of the other services that Brunswick County has, you can trust that. But be careful where you look, and don't perpetuate it if you see it. It is a huge problem that gets 1 million shares, and then we spend half our time trying to chase down these rumors. Before a hurricane, you're going to have people posting the least likely scenario because it's the most devastating scenario. And you're going to have, during the storm, people doing photoshopped images of impacts. And after the storm, you're going to have weird stories. I mean, there's different phases of that. So it is a big-time problem for us. All right, why are we at risk? Well, high pressure and low pressure in the atmosphere. It's not like positive and negative with magnetics, where positive and negative attract. High pressure actually deflects areas of low pressure. So this big area high pressure that's over Bermuda, what do we call that? Yeah, we're really technical in our weather terms. The Bermuda High that sets up the big clockwise gyre in the summertime will deflect the storms around its periphery. So storms coming across in the Cape Verde Islands or the Cabo Verde Islands far out in the tropical Atlantic will stay around that southern periphery. But in the classic sense, when that area high pressure is where it should be, that western periphery is focused over us. So like the spaghetti over here on the left-hand side, they are all of the tropical storm, all the named storms, all the tropical storms and hurricanes that have impacted Cape Fear since the late 1700s. Do you think we should be worried about preparing based on just that history? Yes, and I know I'm preaching to you at this point. Statistically, every 2 to 4 years, we see a tropical storm, and every 6 to 8 years, we see a hurricane. But since the mid-90s, it's been about almost every year or two with a hurricane. It's just been a very active period the last couple decades. This is really wordy. Don'ts and do's. I know you usually hear it do's and don'ts, but let's focus on what not to do. Don't wait until the peak of hurricane season or a few days before a storm threatens your area to prepare. This is now you want to start doing this. Make a plan early in the season so you have enough supplies. Check documents, insurance, prepare your home. That's what you want to do. The second one, don't base your plan only on the Storm Saffir-Simpson scale ranking. Do base your plan on how flooding, storm surge, tornado, and/or wind hazards may impact you. The third one, don't return to the area just because the storm has weakened, and I have those in quotes for a reason, or has been downgraded or degraded. Don't attempt to come back early. Do make sure that all weather threats have subsided, roads are clear and open, and the towns are allowing for a return. My neighbor during Florence, after the storm moved on shore, it was on the national news that Florence has degraded to a tropical storm. He saw that, wanted to come back. The flash flooding and the tornado impacts were actually increasing as the storm's Saffir-Simpson scale was decreasing. So just keep in mind, it's more than just the wind. Don't take the bait, basically. The fourth one, don't work alone to clean up debris after the storm or ignore public health announcements. Do take precaution to avoid becoming injured. Stay cool, hydrated, and properly ventilate generators and grills. The fella on the right-hand side, it was a tragic story. He was helping his neighbor, this was in Carolina Beach, after the storm, and he was walking through a polluted, flooded area and cut his leg on debris, and within 2 days died of sepsis, infection that took over his body. So just be very, very careful. There's many ways to die, become injured before, during, and after a hurricane. Don't rely on social media for decisions that can impact you and your family. Do know where you're going to get good information from local officials, and we talked about that at length before. Strengthening factors. Let me make sure I'm on time here because we have to go to the next thing here. Strengthening factors. Does the storm have weak wind shear aloft over it, so it's venting properly in the upper atmosphere? So when they talk about weak wind shear and hurricane evolution, that allows the storm to intensify. Does it move over deep, warm water, a big column of 80-degree or warmer water, not just skin surface temperatures, but how much energy can it steal from the ocean? So the warm temperatures are key. Does it have ample moisture available to it, or is it running into dry air? Big keys. Dissipating factors. Does it have increasing wind shear aloft? This was Tropical Storm Jerry. The wind shear increased from southwest to northeast, and it blew the tops of the thunderstorms off, exposing the low-level center. You see it? Does it move over cooler water? Does it move onto land or interact with the land? Is there friction? Are there dry air intrusions? Does dry air circulate around the storm itself? The National Hurricane Center, and again, if you don't do it already, I encourage you to start looking on their webpage. These outlooks, I think, are started today, as a matter of fact, the 15th. They provide the probability of formation for the next 7 days with either a tropical storm or a hurricane. Yes, starts May 15th today. Hurricane season goes June 1st, and they'll continue these all the way through November 30th, which is the end of hurricane season. One question I often get is, well, when do we let our guard down, basically, during hurricane season? And Hazel was October 15th. It was a very late monster storm. We don't start feeling warm and fuzzy inside until about early November. So, but it depends year to year, but most time, that's when we start to feel good about it. And when you mouse over these shapes and colors and whatnot, you can it'll pop up with a window describing the chances of formation and other information about the storm. So it's a really good first look at what's going on in the basin and where they may develop. The forecast cone, just one big reminder with the cone is it's not an impact cone. Storms are 300 miles wide. Sandy was 980 miles wide back in 2012. Most hurricanes are about 300 miles across. That cone is a function of the forecast skill from the Hurricane Center. They go on 5-year running averages, so the more accurate they are at their 12-hour forecast, 24, 36, 48, 72, that cone gets smaller. If their forecast skill goes the other direction, the cone gets a little larger. Just remember, storms stay, it is not, you should never hear anybody go, oh good, we're out of the cone. That's just where the center of the storm is going to go. Some of the things that we do at our local weather forecast office, and I know, again, this is just a busy slide showing you some examples, but when we have to ramp up for a storm, we talked earlier, we hear people talking about briefings and whatnot. We ramp up coordination calls with our emergency managers and public safety officials and elected officials as well are on those conference calls. We do briefings. These briefings are available to the public. You just have to go to our webpage or follow us on social media. When we put the briefings out, we push them across as well. They're a very good tool that focus on the impacts. That top right slide shows the impacts for wind, surge, flood, inland flooding, storm surge flooding, surf, those sorts of things. How much is there? So what our partners want to know is timing and how bad, and what aspects of the storm are going to be bad. Is it going to be a flood storm? Is it going to be wind? Is it going to be surge? Is it going to be all of them? And then the timing. And timing of arrival and also the timing of departure. When can we start really that response period? One of the more challenging briefings that I had to do, and it isn't just a formal briefing in front of a lot of people, we'll brief emergency managers if they call us. They need something unique, need to know. One of the ones that I'll always remember during my career was during Florence, when the emergency manager in New Hanover County called. The eye had moved ashore, and he needed a forecast unique to where the eye was going to be and how much time they had and when that back edge eye wall was going to move through so he can get all the responders back to safety. They had to answer over 200 critical calls in 911, and they were using the eye to try and get to those calls. From people being crushed in their homes from trees, to flooding, to cardiac arrests, all sorts of things. We talked about it earlier. You get to a point they can't get to you. One of the people we lost during Florence was in Pender County. It was a cardiac arrest. The ambulance couldn't get to them. That was an indirect fatality in that case. It was a function of the storm causing that situation. So be in tune all through hurricane season, whether it be an outlook, following information on social media, following the Weather Service, what we do, the Hurricane Center. You can't take a day off. These things are forming so fast. Hurricane Michael, a few years ago, went from a tropical depression to a Category 5 and made landfall in Florida Panhandle within 2.5 days. So if you skip a day, you might miss a lot of information. So you've got to stay in that loop of information. The outlook from NOAA is coming out May 22nd. Regardless of what that forecast is, I really don't care. Because all it takes, that last bullet there, is one storm to define our hurricane season, how bad the impacts are and who it impacts. That's what concerns me. My concern is if a forecast comes out, say 2 years from now, below normal for some reason, then I'm going to hear people online at Food Lion at the register in front of me going, oh, they're saying it's not going to be a bad year. And I'm like, who's saying it's not going to be a bad year? All it takes is one storm. During 1992 Hurricane Andrew, Cat 5 made landfall in South Florida. There were only 7 named storms that year. That was it. But that one defined that season. No one remembers the other 6 storms. But Andrew, we remember to this day. Some of the universities are already out. NC State, Colorado State University, they kind of led the way with these predictions, and there are a few others. I have seen them already. They tend to come out 2-3 weeks before our predictions. I wish we came out a little earlier, but it is what it is. But they're calling for either at or above normal activity, just in case you're worried. I do love the predictions in a sense it gets people talking about preparedness. But as long as it's in context, regardless, we've got to prepare given our history of when Fran 2 or Hazel 2 decides to come back at us. So I don't want to be an alarmist, but I have to based on that history. If we ignore it, we're going to fail. We're absolutely going to fail if we ignore it. So thank you for being here. And are we doing questions before we head over? Or?
We'll do it when we get over here.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much, everybody.
All right. I told y'all he wasn't going to disappoint you. All right. So that concludes our conference. Hope everybody learned something while everybody's been talking. And from here, we'll go out this double door straight across and to the right, and we have a vendor fair set up there. Everybody's waiting to talk to you. Thank you.